for those of us that have worked incredibly hard in our own ways, we're right now the economy is losing out on our talent. We're losing. There's actually money that can be, I think, now equated to this lack of championing. Where it is making it. I mean, studios complain about that they need to trim their bottom line right now. I mean, have you looked at tapping into the Latin market? I mean,
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Heyman Marrero from Urbander, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU. Hola, hola! Welcome, everybody, to this episode of I Have Something to Say. And I wanted to bring to the conversation a dear new friend, but I know it's going to be a long-lasting friendship, Mr. Miguel Berg. He's the CEO of Bravoecho Entertainment, and we are going to talk about the underrepresentation of Latino executives in the film, broadcast, just entertainment industry altogether, and how to navigate, right, Hollywood, because he's been there, done that, and how the shift is to owning our own stories. And this is something this guy knows how to do very well. Hi, Miguel. How are you?
Hola, Sami. Thank you. And everyone watching, hello to you as well. And thanks for having me. I know we have a lot to discuss on this front.
Yeah, because you have a lot to say. And so, yes, about this topic. And I know that it was really cool because the way we met was kind of it was like an impromptu kind of setting where, you came in from LA, I came up from Florida. We met in New York City at this powwow session to really talk, right, about the strength and the power of Latinos in all industries, really. But when it came to talk about entertainment and film and movies and the arts and creative and production and all of that, wow, your voice just rose to the top. And so it was fun to be able to find each other, right, in the crowd, and then just zoom into each other and know, like, oh my God, I found another member of the tribe. And I don't know, but that's how I felt. And so I'm so glad that we had a chance to then talk after that.
Oh, absolutely. Meeting you, like, there's certain moments in this journey that when you meet someone with similar energy, that energy amplifies. And that's what this is all about. I really followed a lot of the vibes as vibras from going to an event here in Hollywood at the Hollywood Creative Forum put on by the Walter Cates Foundation. And out of that discussion, a dear common mutual friend, Ana Valdez, president of the Latino Donor Collaborative, it was her invite and voice in the room amplified with mine as like one of, I think there was one other Latina executive in the room, and that was it for Hollywood. Like, of course, the numbers are abysmal. The reports and data over the years express as much. There's frustration from writers, talent, directors, producers, even showrunners, even established showrunners at that. And over the years, it's been a lot of listening, I think, of observing and being in these rooms, somehow like a Trojan horse my way into into development suites at two major studios at NBC Universal and Warner Brothers Television. And of course, you kind of start to take a look around, assess the situation, see what others are doing, of course. But start to notice a pattern of you're the only one there. So where are our champions? Who are our allies? And of course, I think we've seen not only from a creative standpoint how that's impacted representation of una Latina, un Latino, seeing themselves representing in media and streaming basic cable or broadcast, where the numbers are just not there. And so it's been just a summary of listening to others, seeing where the problems are, identifying those problems, and then now hopefully with my mission on with Bravoecho Entertainment, it's not just for film and television, but really the next generation of how to of uplifting our voices and talent and stories for years to come. And I'm sure we'll dive in it more. Yeah, there's certain people along the way with so much energy, and like yours, Sammy, like it makes sense. And hopefully, with much more time and relationship building over the course of the coming weeks and years ahead, I'm sure this will be one of many conversations we'll have. So
Yes, I know. And it's conversations that lead to action, right? I mean, I think that like you, I've sat in so many listening sessions, in so many roundtables, in so many symposiums, panel discussions, whatever you want to call it. I mean, but then
yeah.
it's the frustration to see that it leads to nowhere, right? Or that the people that were originally on that panel representing or invited to be part of the conversation and to really provide insights, then all of a sudden they're either not there or left, right? And so then
Indeed.
you're left with this void and this persistent quest, for conversation, that again does not yield any results. And so I know, just taking it back, right? We're talking,
Mhm.
in your experience, over 15 years of
That's
working
right.
in broadcast, in film, in production. I mean, tell me about your beginnings and how in the world, right, did you get into entertainment and into production? And because, come on, you stick out like a sore thumb in these spaces, right? So then how the hell did you manage to break through?
And of course, loaded question along the way, but I'm happy to share the journey. So, everyone's trajectory into Hollywood and entertainment is very different, as I've come to learn. I am very proudly first generation Colombiano, Mexicano. I came to the States when I was only 5 years old. And since then, growing up, I had a lot of influences of not only learning English from media. Like, I mean, let's talk about that too. I mean, for my own journey, like, those are the early influences of what shaped a lot of my creative career. And so tuning in to like to films like Tim Burton's films were a key thing. Beetlejuice and a lot of the genre horror films. I got real, just loved it, I guess. And little did I know that I mean, I did start off in mechanical engineering and studied for 2 years at the University of Delaware while I was growing up in New Jersey. And someone handed me a camera. Well, how can I take stories and have something new and fresh to tell every single time, just being trapped in a cubicle? And I think that's where, like, yes, there was the analytical brain, the problem solving brain side of me too, of analyzing, and I'm still fascinated by planes and all the engineering. But lo and behold, there was this other plan in place for me as a destino, right? Of becoming somewhat of a story engineer. Like, the engineering's never left me. So I initially started off by telling not only music videos, but doing what's called crediting or being a producer, director, editor, and you're kind of like this one man band, so to
Mm.
speak. And this is, of course, for any viewers out there that know like what a mini DV tape is. This is all before, you know, before the iPhone, pre-iPhone, where you could,
Before
have as many takes
streaming.
as
Way before streaming, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't even a thought, right? So I remember one of my early assignments for Travel Channel was covering a 60-acre farm from 8 p.m. to midnight, and of course the cameras back then didn't have a night mode, right? So it took a lot of planning and really strategic and tactical execution to deliver for these executives. And out of that, I won my first Telly Awards, and began really seeing that there was a promise of talent with not only my directing lens, but also bringing people together. And certainly in my undergrad, and because I had moved down to South Carolina, there were hardships and adversity along the way, especially a lot of the systemic issues that when it comes to film schools and access to opportunities like internships, there were moments where I was flat out denied internships and provided those opportunities. And as a result, I had my entrepreneurial brain kicked in and said, "Hey, I have to still bring people together. I still have to make something happened." So did start my company back then to South Carolina and started creating shows. So I not only founded a network for my campus for 8,000 students, and I think now it's like over a regional channel over 130,000 from what I've heard in recent years. But like that also, when you start a network, you need programming, as we've come to know, and very much in parallel with the streamers now, right? And so as a result, that ended up leading me on this charge, not only to explore my skill set of bringing people together, doing a lot of the logistics, kind of like running an airport and being part of like a plane, which were also an early influence thanks to my mother. and um, and that's really the where things started. Eventually, of course, we had the recession, and living in the South as a Latino, as we know, it's incredibly difficult to find these opportunities, let alone wait for one, and you continue applying and you're never heard. So I have all of that, and it has taken a lot of ideation, innovation too, of how do you do things differently, who do you connect with. And you may hear this in Hollywood a lot, the comic trope of it's who that's the only way to make it. It's who you know. For me, it's not who you know, it's how you know them, because that implies an investment on the relationship that really is mutually beneficial. And yes, what can be perceived as transactional in some regards it is, but at the end of the day, we also want to have fun with the stories that we're making, and also representing our stories authentically. So one of the things that I then did in that moment in time was also got connected with the president of Colombia and the government. They were also starting to build their audiovisual market, and back then it was just the first audiovisual business conference, and now it's known as Bogota Audiovisual Market, BAM. But that's also where incentives and tax incentives got founded. So being in the rooms, acting dramatically, doing the producing, doing the editing, doing the directing, the writing, of course, and then of course logistics, and bringing it all together, to a lot of success that has now really democratized a lot of opportunity, not just here in the States, but abroad. Because after that moment, I also came back to South Carolina to found and create my own international film festival. And Sammy, you've heard me tell the story of working in news. I worked in the newsroom, and thought maybe that was a path for me. And I was the one trying to make, cinematic gems of the local car commercials you're always used to, right? And how to make them different. And I had one boss told me that I need to be more mediocre with work. And I'm like, I'm a Latino. We don't do things mediocre. We put in three times as hard, five times, 10,000 times as hard as anyone else. And where's the return on that investment, right? And so out of that is where the film festival came to be, and for the Greenville International Film Festival. And that's where I got connected to Chapman University, where I did my master's in producing, which ultimately led me to find a mentor with an agent back then, Harry Uffland, Robert De Niro and Jodie Foster, and worked very closely with Mr. Martin Scorsese. And he told me some keywords of being it was just key advice. Unfortunately, he passed away recently, but he left. He said, "Be bold and finish what you start." And in this industry, there's so many starts and stops, so many moments of when you're doubting yourself. And like there were moments like that too for me where I almost became a meteorologist. Like got accepted to be riddle all stuff too, and I was like, well, what am I doing with my life, right? So there are those moments, and that's where we really need to come together as a community to realize that I guarantee you I'm not the only one going through this. And it's that sharing of information, and of course what we're doing here, taking that action, taking those steps towards meaningful change, so that the next generation and those that come after us also find it easier, and not only easier, but they're also able to equipped with the knowledge to make things better and really innovate, and contribute to the industry in many more ways than one. So yes, something that happened out of that experience at Chapman was really great, producing one of the top movies of my year. But then that also led me into work at NBC Universal, where I did land that internship working with E International, and other brands like Telemundo International, Universal Pictures, as well on the international side, and Style Network. And eventually now with the news of Ryan Seacrest taking over Wheel of Fortune, I have worked on a show with Ryan Seacrest as well. So it's really cool to see, how the career progresses. But even in those moments, as hard as it was, I would always look around me, observe, and then, of course, even when we talk about internships and access for students, especially Latino, Latina, and Latinx students, like sometimes they don't even know that these opportunities exist. Whether they're an
Right.
accountant, want to get into, or a lawyer, or an engineer, or in tech, and the truth is, we need all of them, all of us, to make this work. Not just on the creative development side as well, but of course the numbers are lacking on that side. So, of course, I mean, this wonderful show you've put together. I have a lot to say, and I definitely have so many stories there. But that experience ultimately led me to working with Warner Brothers as well, very closely in trying to break down those barriers and walls, providing students opportunities across all levels, not just the prestige film schools as we know them, but like working with HBCUs, community colleges. I recently, this is something I'm going to share as a news story because it just happened in the between us connecting and meeting, and at this moment today, like because I about 3 weeks ago, I received a text, and it was from a former intern, who I know in other executives above my level weren't necessarily happy or wanting to champion this Latino student who happened to have experienced homeless. He went to community college. Like, this was the internship for him at the studio. And I said, you're going to find a way to share this experience with you. Well, I got a text from him 3 weeks ago because he was also like, was alien to him, the world of film schools and media and entertainment. And guess what? He just graduated as a new producer out of Chapman's program. But as well, he also landed, is working at a production company as well right now, in development where he wanted to be. And after all those hardships, it's like, what did it take? An opportunity, a champion in the room, right?
Yeah.
And who knows what the next years of change will be for him too, because I'm sure that'll stick with him. But I broke down in a store when I got that text message. But it all leads to this conversation about representation, who's in the room. We've heard writers, we've heard the actors, as well, of we're giving it our all, we're creating stories, we're giving Hollywood what they want, but people are saying no or flat out rejecting us. And after analyzing the problem, it is absolutely um, it is absolutely apparent that these companies and major studio companies alike need to hire more Latin executives, and the just numbers are not there. Like, in some cases, even former departments I've had the privilege of working with, like, I was the only Latino in the room, so you would be the one that could basically speak for an entire community. that weight of on only my shoulders. Like it should be really, it shouldn't be an other thing. It should be mainstream. And so that's something I'm hoping to do with my, aspiring to do with my company, is that we turn the minority into the mainstream. That, if a story isn't baked at the right level quite yet, that how do we level up that creator? How do we level up that writer? How do we level up that talent and guide someone, to that right point, whether they need to have a conversation with somebody or take that step to connect them and point them in the right direction. Instead of, sometimes we see it in the industry, tearing each other apart. I mean, Latinos, we're not a monolith. We have
Yeah.
different, I like to say, diferente banderas, diferentes sabores, right? Different flags and different
Yeah.
flavors. A comedy that plays, for example, in Mexico might not play the same way in Argentina, but points to a lot of more opportunity, I think, for business executives, advertisers, right? So there's a lot I'm sure we'll unpack, but for my journey, what I've seen is, I've somehow broke my way into these suites. But yeah, taking a look around, I was often the only one there. And with this life experience, of course, I want to help share that for the community, share that with the community and talent. And on tracks is my focus on the US Hispanic Latino track. And then also, how do we build the bridges back to some of our native countries? So for me in Colombia, and I know lots happening as a hub right now, city, but there you get into a lot of the systemic issues as well of pay disparagement. There's a lot of there's no equity in terms of how budget would, a budget that plays here in the States is not going to get the same budget in Mexico, for example. And even
Right.
recently I've had producers reach out and testing my hypothesis and all this, where I've had producers reach out with stories, and these are experienced producers in some of our native countries. Again, with like over 15, 20 years of experience working with brands like Coca Cola and Pan Bimbo, TV Azteca, Televisa. I mean, and and they're reaching out to me and saying, like, I have all this experience, Miguel, but we don't know how to sell it in LA. Like, who could we talk to?
Mm.
That's a
Yeah.
lot of, it's like they don't know we're here, and we are. There are. It's not the scarcity mindset. It's like, if you want to find us, we're here, but we need to be championed, and not given an opportunity. I think given is the word, is not the right term, but rather, we've earned that through the work that we've done and put in.
Yeah.
They say the 10,000 hours. I don't think anyone that works in Hollywood is asking for something to just be like, oh, here's given. I'm sure it happens. Obviously, there's a lot of nepotism, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I've seen it too, but I think from those of us that have worked incredibly hard in our own ways, we're right now the economy is losing out on our talent. We're losing. There's actually money that can be, I think, now equated to this lack of championing. Where it is making it. I mean, studios complain about, that they need to trim their bottom line right now. I mean, have you looked at tapping into the Latin market? I mean,
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And it seems ridiculous, right? When we're looking at the numbers, and get back to our friends, Ana,
yeah,
right? Ana Valdez and the Latino Donor Collaborative, that they just came out with this report that if Latinos were a country, a standalone country, we would be the fifth largest GDP in the entire world, right? And we're talking about US Latinos. That says a lot. But there's other research. I mean, I know that Latinos, for example, go to the movies in groups, right? It's a family
yeah,
affair. We are more likely to go to the movies, I think, 5 times more than the average family. We are avid consumers of media, period, and all forms of media. And we do have disposable income and are very loyal, right, to
incredible.
companies and
Yep,
organizations that recognize our cultural values and that speak to us, right, with genuine content that reflects, who we are. And so, I mean, I know that the numbers you mentioned before are bad, like really dismal, right? And I think some of the latest data from UCLA Diversity Report said uh, that although Latinos are 20% practically of the US population, they're less than 2.1% of TV executives and 1.8%
That's
of
right.
film
Yep.
executives. That is
And that's
nuts.
and I want to say to provide even further context, that's out of the 2020 UCLA reports. With all the
Oh,
layoffs and the landscape, it's actually less than that now. And
wow.
so when we talk, another part of the report was what, less than 5.1% of actors, and it's actually even less than that, 2.6, and decreasing even for next year. You know, it's abysmal. We're not even breaking double digits, and yet we're
Yeah,
providing 2.8 trillion, 20% to the American economy. Where's our return on investment? I want
right,
to know that, and
right.
and a lot of it is like, I know working, I mean, at least I did my best to champion at Warner Brothers as much as I could, at least on the TV side. And, I'm no longer there. And like, when you look at the who comprises the development space, and you look around and say like, well, there's no Latinos in the room at all. Well, if you're
Yeah,
a writer, guess what? You're SOL. Like, zero is not a feeling. It is a fact. We had, like, your
right,
chances of potentially getting a story in front of an executive are close to zero itself, and
right.
that's a systemic issue that needs to be addressed urgently as well. So,
But the thing is, you've had the firsthand lived experiences
mhm.
that explain what's going on behind the scenes, because I've read some of the articles that you've published, and you've mentioned broadly, right, and openly, that you've been told to your face that you're not ready for the major leagues, right? Or
Yeah.
that what you mentioned before, that you have to like step like bring it down two notches and be more mediocre, right? That you're not even in line, right, to be moved up, or being considered, and so also, the how do you say, the lack of appreciation for your multidisciplinary expertise, right? That because you had to do it all, and you learned all of these
Oh,
skills,
indeed.
it's like almost like, who the hell do you think you are? That kind of vibe of, no te vistas que no vas para el party, and so then talk to me about that, because it seems to me like it's by design then. And how did that inform your decision to then launch, your
And
current company? Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, and that's what I love about you, Sammy, is that you don't stray away or deflect from the real issue. And, often Hollywood doesn't want, we're trapped in these NDAs or, these other conversations. It's like, oh, it's hush hush, don't talk about it. Guess what? I think it is time. We're not getting represented. Like, it's time to talk about how we're treated. There's plenty of colleagues that I know in the industry that have, I mean, they're just as qualified and have also experienced similar treatment, where they're dismissed or brought in after the fact, after something's already developed. And then it's like, well, what's the point then? And then, of course, naturally, the box office reflects their mistake. For me specifically, yeah, you're right. I've been told as well, to my face, like, you're going to be the bump on the road to my success. And for that specific program at one of these studios, like, I was helping writers in that moment in time that were like, oh, well, you're an assistant, you're an administrator. Oh, you're not an exec yet, kid, so like, we're not paying attention to you. But for me, it's like, if you're working as part of these pipeline, entre comillas, I say, pipeline programs, and you're bringing forward talent, but then you're refusing to even hear them out, then it becomes the same cycle of people all the time. So I've noticed that working at the TV workshops, for instance, where I was bringing forward a writer, and a black writer in this case, who I came to know and track his talent. I knew he was a sitcom writer. And sure enough, I challenged him and I said, and flexing my executive muscle, I said, hey, come back to me in 3 days with a story. I don't know how it's going to go with this program that you're applying to, but let's see how I can work with you. And, we challenge each other and keep each other accountable. Right. And out of that, instead of being at a seminar or a panel or a workshop for that summer, he was staffed on the show Family Reunion for Netflix and has since worked 4 seasons of that, earning his way, and working his way all the way to like story editor. And of course, on the producing side, building his credits, it's changed his life. And just because I recognized he was a writer, like assistants in Hollywood have so much insight. Like it's really who moves the industry are the assistants. And, we don't talk about them enough because that's also, whether it's at film school, whether it's the internships, and then of course the assistantships, there's that lack of access. I mean, for me, I've had the support of my family, but I know not everybody has that, which is why I'm aware of it. I'm aware of that privilege as a Latino and working in Hollywood. That's why I try to democratize it with my community and my network as well. By offering those unique opportunities, whether it is at a film festival too, and so I have seen it firsthand where we're marginalized right out the gate, not even heard out, and so to hear those kind of things of like, oh, it's not even a thought to move you up after 4 years, 5 years, or of work, and mind you, in that moment in time, the person that told me that, like, didn't even realize, like, I helped roll my entire business to work from home in a moment where we didn't even know what that meant. And I did that in 3 days, so it's like, you wanted to keep your business going. There you go. When they, and eventually it was time to move on, but from that, and then history and time proved to be my ally, because that company, guess what? It isn't around anymore. They did not adapt to the strategy, or even just listening. It's very much a skill set of listening. And something I read recently, I think, relates to this discussion, Sammy, too. And this comes out of like the Marine Corps leadership manual. The leaders lead people, managers manage things, is something I read recently. And I think that stuck with me much because it's so true, because I've seen a ton of leadership, entre comillas, who try to manage people rather than lead them to that success.
Yes.
And I think that's a key thing here that Hollywood should learn. Because if they do take the time to invest in building out that career path, and it's knowing that even an assistantship isn't to be permanent, investment in time, after 3 years, we want you hit that next level, right? Whether we get a 10% on it or not, like it should be done with that kind of integrity. It should be done with that kind of conviction, so that, we can rise up together and have more success. Because eventually, if your employees move on, they essentially become your competition. So, and I'm not saying that competition can't be healthy. Of course it can be. But, oftentimes the stories I've heard are pretty much there's a sense of level repeating, which is actually what Ana Valdez and I spoke about at the Hollywood Creative Forum, was how we are putting in that investment of time, putting in the effort, working 3 times, 4 times as hard as anyone else, and being in those rooms, trying to offer multifaceted skill set, whether it's, I've been literally in charge of not only intern programs, creative notes, dealing with, and also dealing with light bulbs and AC, as well as like internet and tech. So like the best, it's like, do you need a one-stop shop to open your business? There you go. But that, it is kind of funny at the end, but like, no, I think I'm not the only one that's doing this. I think there is an opportunity that we hold, and a power that we hold as Latinos and Latinas and Latinx, and I know how we're calling ourselves too, because we're capable of defining our own language. That's the beauty of it. And for me, it's like having seen that, it's what's really informed, now having built up this expertise, is this the right moment to then enact and apply that so I can be a more effective leader and actually lead people to success, rather than try to manage crises that ultimately end up with the turnover, let's say. So I think um, that's what led me on this mission with Bravoecho Entertainment. And it's not, like I said, it's not just film and television development, but also like ideas that are burgeoning inside of my head that are like, how do we approach management for
Mm-hmm.
Latinos industry? How do we approach tech, fashion, brands? These brand partnerships that are so a part of our zeitgeist right now. And I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen. I mean, I hope everyone out there has seen Flaming Hot by now. I mean, like that's a testament of how brand partnerships can be beautiful, in the same way that we've had other films like like Air from with Nike earlier this year. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it is a pattern here that's happening with our brands. And I mean, are you to tell me that like we don't have brands within the Latin community that we can uplift and make
What?
films about? Right?
Plenty.
Like,
Yes,
what an
totally.
opportunity, like where's the Pan Bimbo movie, You know?
Yes, exactly. Right, right. Or the Cafe Bustelo, right?
Well, that's amazing. I mean, there's another cafe out of Brooklyn, I believe, Don Carvajal Cafe, which was founded by this 18-year-old entrepreneur with his own coffee. And I'm like, how did you do that? Like, yeah, they got un cafecito. Like there's so much ripe opportunity in this moment, but are facing an inflection point, and that cannot be dismissed. With the numbers and trajectory that we've heard out of the years, by 2050, right, we're going to be half of the population, even in the next 3 years. I've heard from those in my network at agencies and stuff, like they're prepping for like, oh my God, we're going to have an increase in the Latin population, 6 to 8 million more. Like, how do we service
Yeah.
that? And guess what? Where are the executives?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
gonna let and I'm going to quote here someone who is I had the privilege of meeting and left such an impact on me as well. Executive producer and master of superheroes, but Victoria Alonso. What a phenomenal executive, and something that I heard from her that landed with me so much was like, first off, to feel the moment and not be living as like, oh my God, I have to do the notes and like do all this, but like actually feel and be present. But also that we are capable of really building beyond more than what Hollywood is telling us. Because if we don't do something in the moment, we're going to let Hollywood define us rather than us define Hollywood. And that is why I love Victoria Alonso, because she's 1000% correct. There, I think the takeaways from this is that, yeah, these are very much systemic issues. It often hurts as well when it comes from our own community. Like that's, just because we're people of color, like that doesn't mean that, we have our own prejudices and biases. And that's certainly, I faced that too from leadership where, there's no malintent. I want to support our community. I want to support the executives. I know
Yeah.
that, like, even in those moments, I realize the executives well above me have had their share of challenges. I was there to support and bolster, but when they're not identifying that the intent, then we're left on the sidelines, and some of these companies have gone away now as a result. So, I still care for my former coworkers, the good and the bad ones, that I've seen. Because I don't think it's my nature to discriminate in that regard, or I think I've learned as much from my failures, and I've had more failures than I've had successes, but I've learned from them like an engineer. So like that's how it all comes back to.
That's great. That's really great. And so in the end, I just feel like it's wonderful to to learn that more and more people in production and in creative spaces are taking that leap. I don't even think it's a leap of faith anymore, because the numbers are there, right? So knowing that
Yeah.
20% of the population is Latino, knowing that our GDP is $2.8 trillion a year,
And growing.
right? Knowing that we consume in this bicultural, bilingual, multimedia formats, right? It's
Yeah.
really not too risky, right? To go out independently, launch your own business, and work in this space. Not only producing our own stories that are varied, because again, we're not monolithic, right? There's so much diversity, even within, Latino culture, but then also in the arena of elevating, building capacity, guiding, directing, not in the production sense, but directing people, right?
Right.
Through the right pathways so they can avoid the pitfalls of, mira, no hables con ese loco because this person's not going to help you. Go this other route, right? So you've already been there, right? And so you know how to navigate the bullshit and are kind of like how do you say, like a steward, right? Of
Yes.
talent, helping them get to where they need to be, but like through an accelerated, pathway. And I think that's fantastic. And I thank you for it.
Oh, very welcome. And I think you've hit on a couple things in what you just said too, because the word risk, and words matter. Working in development, words matter. It's also how you say things, and oftentimes you'll hear from execs, "Oh, that's too risky. Oh, that's not a name." And they're talking about established showrunners of major hit shows, and it's like, oh well, they're not. Who's the Steven Spielberg of this? And it's like, well, guess what? You kind of ignored our pipeline, so those showrunners are there, but they may not be household names because guess what? They haven't been let in or provided that opportunity to really make their pitch. Right. For me, it's not about risk; it's about opportunity, and that's where we're at in this moment. Is that there is a massive opportunity to not only go into obviously on the entrepreneurial side. Create your own businesses, but how do you also approach brands? How do you approach film and television development? Gaming, another one in the tech sector. I mean, like that's a $92 billion industry and growing. And are we gonna let Hollywood define us as well in that space? I mean, we've been going through just the pandemic, right? I mean, obviously there's still stuff lingering. That's another conversation. The reason I'm talking about this is because gaming, I've seen the work from some of these major studios. And guess what? Gaming is the sector that helps support them. Otherwise, they would have gone under, quite frankly.
Mm.
So, like, how do those ideas then cross pollinate so that we have more innovation on that side? Something we haven't talked about yet is also artificial intelligence and how that's going to inform. If someone's feeding the robot, well, who's feeding it for community and our voices? Because guess what? We're going to be left out of that programming. That's a problem. Or then we get into, even for like development, something that I learned early on at NBC was this notion of what I've come to call hispandering, because I started noticing and tracking a lot of the shows that were going to air. Guess what? They were playing negative stereotypes about our communities, right? And so I said, hey, we got to stop hispandering. And I remember even at my level, I was like, back then I was an assistant. I said to one of the execs, actually two execs, and I said, I know I'm nobody here for you guys, but like, I'm going to tell you this, don't let the show be the one show that defines everything, you know,
Mm.
just having the balls to say it, of like, it is what it is, and that
Yeah.
I felt stood is I was going to call it out. It's something that is done, but I also found something in the keyword of hispandering and hispandered content. I'm sure You can think of maybe examples that you've seen through any binge list that you may have. It shows that anyone out there is watching, right? Are we always playing the maids? We're always playing the drug dealer, criminales, narcos. I mean, as a Colombian, like I will never look at something that's all about narcos at all. Like if we're going into that
Ever.
world,
Yes,
it's
ever.
like
So,
it's
yeah.
like what else can you tell me, that's going to amplify another community. So for instance, like one of the action steps I took was to reach out to a director writer of a script I read last year, and now I'm helping them produce this film that really is a twisted take on a telenovela that's in the vein of Sunset Boulevard with a little bit of shading of White Lotus. And guess what, it's queer, it's Latinx. We're gonna really approach it. We got a really great team, producing partners as well that I have, as well as a wonderful director and writer. And we are really changing that narrative and even in this moment. So we are really, those are the kind of opportunities of how do you build that allyship? How do you work across your network? And then when you don't know the answer, ask, find that community, find that and I think that with the work that you've been doing with Urbander and even at Casa Culture, I mean, like that speaks volumes about how to move the needle forward. So I thank you, Sammy, for all the work that you've put in and all the insight that I'm learning from you as well. So that's how it's done.
Yeah, this is really great. Listen, I can't wait to continue, uh sharing space with you, sharing ideas with you, learning about what you're doing, sharing what we're doing. I mean, because this is where magic really happens. And I know you're up to your eyeballs, and we've been trying to coordinate this conversation as a follow-up to our first conversation, because I'm like, dude, why did we not record that first conversation? But this one is just as good. It's so yummy to talk to you, and I want to thank you for making time to bring these issues to the forefront, because I'm with you, and you can count on me. We need to change this. The time is now. And I can't thank you. I thank you can't thank you more for just being open about what the problems are, and also about discussing the solutions. That really, it's about working independently, and owning our own stories.
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, we all have a narrative to share. We all have a different experience into it. But I also have such a strong power when we own up to that and also hold, even this, I mean, when we talk about the studios, like we've seen the reports, and when they come out, I can tell you the work of the Latinos that are here in LA, at least, it's like, oh, water is wet. We're so accustomed to this. We've become like drone and numb to it. But the truth is like right now, in this moment, if we don't take any action whatsoever, we're going to be erased. How do you sustain a country that way when you literally have 20% of your population essentially being culturally erased or not afforded those opportunities? And that's where we go into the work of equity. Like, it really is something that needs to be um, done about it. And like those are really sort of strong passion points. And it's surprising that, I don't know, if you don't happen to be Latino and you're watching this, like, if you're in the C suites, hey, guess what, you're missing out on all that money you're leaving money on the table. So it is business. It's creative, it could be fun, you can do any kind of story, but at the end of the show business. And when you have someone that has had these experiences and then you have them level repeating, guess what, we're just going back to one. I don't believe in that. I think we can move forward and really make that change happen, and it happens with people like you, Sammy. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, listen, have a great weekend coming up, because we run these on Thursdays, and I'm going to be, reaching out so we can have more of this conversation, okay?
Anytime, absolutely. Un abrazo bien fuerte a toda la gente que está sintonizada. Here, there, everywhere, far, Latin America, if you're there. Of course, shout out Colombiano, Boricua.
Wepa! Yeah.
We got this. I mean, like, we really together, everybody, and we can do this. We have a lot more power. So thank you all for watching.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of I Have Something to Say, where subject matter experts are unafraid and unapologetic about sharing their perspectives regarding issues that impact our lives. They speak up because basically they give a shit. So if you're tired of canned answers and want to finally hear real people cut through the BS and talk about real issues, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Sami Jimen Marrero from Urbander, and behind our mixer is our producer, Chris Majoka from UdoU.